Hello everyone, and welcome to my Sister Wives For You channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. In one of the most emotionally charged and devastating days in Sister Wives history, Kody Brown, once the confident patriarch of a sprawling plural family, completely broke down in court as the final judgment in a highly publicized legal dispute exposed a wave of heartbreaking truths about the downfall of his entire family unit. For fans who have followed the Browns for over a decade, this courtroom moment wasn't just another legal proceeding, it was a symbolic unraveling of the very foundation the Brown family had claimed to be built upon: unity, love, faith, and balance. But on that day, under oath, with cameras capturing every anguished tear and every shocking admission, the truth became undeniable. The Brown family was broken beyond repair, and Kody was finally forced to confront the pain he had long buried behind anger, blame, and ego. It all began with what was supposed to be a routine legal battle over the distribution of Coyote Pass, the large parcel of land in Flagstaff, Arizona that Kody had insisted would one day hold a utopian compound for the entire family. Instead, it became the symbol of everything that went wrong. Mary, Janelle, and Christine had all made financial contributions toward the land, but after Christine's exit in 2021, Janelle's silent battle for independence in 2022, and Mary's final detachment in 2023, questions began swirling about who really owned what, and more importantly, who was entitled to what now that the family had all but disbanded. The legal proceedings had been building for months. Fans were aware of the tension over Coyote Pass, especially Janelle's lingering frustration that she had nothing to show for her decades of commitment. Christine had long let go of her share, emotionally at least, while Mary had kept her distance but never signed any official release of claims. Then came the bombshell. Court documents filed by Janelle's legal team suggested that Kody and Robyn had quietly funneled ownership of the majority of the land into a separate trust, one that excluded the other wives entirely. It was a betrayal of epic proportions, and when the court date arrived, it wasn't just about property. It was about respect, justice, and emotional closure. Kody, appearing in a sharply pressed suit that contrasted his visibly gaunt and weary demeanor, was initially composed as the hearing began. But as the judge read aloud the findings of the financial investigation, including the fact that Robyn was listed as co-trustee on the land despite having contributed no documented funds toward its purchase, Kody's composure began to crack. He gripped the sides of the table. His eyes darted toward Robyn, who sat behind him, stone-faced. And then, as the judge asked him directly why the financial contributions of his former wives were never formalized in the trust agreement, Kody let out a sigh that could only be described as the weight of years collapsing in real time. "I thought we'd all be together," he said, voice shaking. "I thought they'd never leave. I didn't think we needed contracts between family." It was a stunning moment. A man who had so often hidden behind righteous indignation was now openly admitting that his belief in an unbreakable family structure, one built on emotional trust rather than legal protection, had been naive at best and manipulative at worst. Mary, seated across the courtroom, didn't blink. Janelle stared downward. Christine, appearing via video call from Utah, shook her head with quiet, knowing sadness. Then came the emotional unraveling. As the attorneys presented evidence of the personal bank accounts Kody and Robyn had used to make post-split upgrades to their Flagstaff mansion, including extensive renovations paid for using what court records described as blended funds, Kody's face crumpled. He turned away from the bench, wiping his eyes, and when he finally spoke again, his voice broke completely. "I lost them all," he whispered. "I lost every single one of them." The courtroom went silent. For so long, the narrative had been Kody versus the wives, Kody blaming Christine for leaving, gaslighting Janelle for questioning his authority, dismissing Mary's needs for years on end. But in that one raw, unfiltered moment, Kody revealed a flicker of self-awareness that had long been absent from the public eye. This wasn't just about Coyote Pass anymore. It was about a man realizing, too late, that his own choices had caused the empire to fall. And the court didn't hold back either. The final judgment was swift and clear. Janelle was awarded full legal ownership of her portion of the land, retroactively applied to her initial investment. Mary, despite not requesting physical land, was granted a financial settlement equivalent to her share, with an option to claim future profit should the land be sold. Christine, having already walked away, declined any claim but submitted a victim impact statement that was read into the record, one that laid bare the emotional cost of being an afterthought during the construction of Kody and Robyn's dream, while the rest were told to wait just a little longer. But perhaps the most explosive part of the hearing came when the judge questioned why Robyn's name was the only one listed on the remaining active deed, and why she had never once attempted to notify the others of the trust's existence. Robyn, pale and defensive, claimed she had no idea how the documents were filed and that she trusted Kody to handle the business side of things. The judge wasn't buying it. It is clear to this court that transparency was not a shared value in this family structure, the judge declared. And unfortunately, those who trusted blindly were taken advantage of. This is not just about paperwork. This is about consent. And that consent was violated. Kody sobbed openly then, head in his hands. For the first time, the man who once prided himself on being the glue that held his plural family together was forced to sit in a room where every one of those wives, present or virtually present, had something he could no longer claim: independence, clarity, and peace. The tragedy was not just legal. It was emotional, generational. Viewers who had watched the Brown children grow up saw this moment for what it truly was: the death of the Brown family as they knew it. And Kody, for all his past bravado, was just a man sitting alone in a courtroom, weeping into silence. As the session adjourned, Janelle offered no comment. Christine, when approached by reporters outside her Utah home, simply said, "Closure is painful, but it's necessary." Mary, in a rare moment of candor, posted a cryptic Instagram story later that evening. The truth always comes out, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And Kody? He didn't attend the post-court press briefing. Instead, he was spotted driving alone through the winding roads of Flagstaff, his car pulling briefly into the dusty driveway of Coyote Pass, the land he once called the future. He sat there for 20 minutes, unmoving. Then he left. The final judgment exposed more than financial deceit or poor planning. It exposed a man whose ambition to control a narrative cost him the very people he built it around. Kody always claimed he was building something revolutionary, a plural family based on choice and cooperation. But in the end, the only choice that mattered was the one each wife made when they walked away from him. And in that courtroom, with no more stories to spin, Kody Brown finally faced the reality he'd been avoiding for years. You can't lead a family if you've already lost their trust. The Brown legacy didn't end in drama. It ended in quiet devastation. And for Kody, the man who once stood at the center of it all, that silence was louder than any judgment could ever be. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Kody Brown's labored breathing, his chest rising and falling beneath a rumpled suit that looked like it had seen better years, his once defiant gaze hollow, sunken, searching for a shred of dignity in a moment where there was none. The judge's gavel hadn't even struck yet when the tears began to well in his eyes, but no one interrupted. Not Mary. Not Janelle. Not even Christine, who had once cried 1,000 tears for the same man who now stood trembling on the edge of legal and emotional collapse. And certainly not Robyn, whose face was stoic, unreadable, cold as glass. After months of hearings, sealed depositions, bombshell witness testimonies, and relentless media coverage, the final judgment had arrived, not just from the court, but from the people Kody had once called his family. This was more than the end of a marriage. This was the exposure of a legacy built on secrets, control, and emotional manipulation, and the court transcripts revealed a story so tragic, so raw, that even longtime Sister Wives viewers couldn't have imagined the truth unraveling this way. What began as a complicated custody review and division of marital assets spiraled into a full-scale character reckoning. Over a dozen Brown children had submitted emotional impact statements. So had Mary, Janelle, and Christine. What they revealed painted a devastating portrait of Kody, not as a misunderstood patriarch navigating polygamy, but as a man who, over time, weaponized religion, affection, and fatherhood to maintain control over a collapsing empire. According to testimony, Kody's pattern of emotional abuse was systematic. Conditional love, public humiliation, gaslighting, favoritism, and above all, threats to withdraw affection or spiritual protection if his wives or children disobeyed his will. "I was afraid to speak," one adult child admitted. "If I questioned him, he would pull back completely. He'd stop looking at me. He'd walk past me in the house like I didn't exist." Another child shared, "He used scripture to shame us if we disagreed with him, especially the girls. He told my sister she would never be worthy of celestial marriage because she challenged him in front of Robin." The judge's final ruling, spanning 68 pages, did more than assign custody or distribute assets. It called Kody's conduct deeply troubling, manipulative, and emotionally coercive. The judge ruled in favor of full legal and physical custody to the mothers in all minor cases, stripped Kody of joint financial access, and restricted him to supervised visitation for the 3 youngest children unless extensive therapy and court-mandated counseling were completed. But what broke Kody wasn't just the ruling. It was the words that came after. The words that changed everything. "Mr. Brown," the judge said, staring over reading glasses with a gravity that silenced the room, "this court finds that your actions over the last decade have contributed directly to the psychological distress of your children and emotional deterioration of your marriages. You used authority not to uplift your family, but to silence them. You weaponized faith against women who trusted you. That is not leadership. That is coercion." And that's when Kody broke. His face collapsed into his hands, his shoulders heaving as he sobbed uncontrollably. Not the proud, stoic tears he once cried on TLC when confronting a challenge, but the unfiltered, collapsing wails of a man who finally saw what he had lost. All of it. Not just his wives. Not just his children. But the very identity he had clung to for decades. His tears echoed through the courtroom, but no one moved. Christine watched with quiet resolve. Janelle looked downward, her jaw clenched in recognition of the years of emotional labor. Mary, long estranged and no longer in love, still blinked back tears, perhaps for the man he could have been. Only Robin finally broke the silence with a whisper, "Kody, please," but the plea was empty. Her voice held no power anymore. Because now, the truth was public. The mask was shattered. The world saw him as he was, not a misunderstood plural father, but a broken man clinging to a kingdom that no longer existed. Outside the courthouse, the world reacted like wildfire. Social media erupted. Hashtags like #Kody Brown exposed and #Justice for the Brown kids began trending. Former fans of Sister Wives poured out support for Christine, Janelle, Mary, and especially the children, many of whom bravely posted messages afterward confirming what they had endured. Gwendolyn tweeted, "Truth matters. Even when it hurts." Paydon wrote in an Instagram story, "We protected him for too long." Even Michael T. and Tony, who had stayed neutral in the past, reposted quotes from the judge's ruling with subtle emojis of broken chains and crying hearts. Meanwhile, TLC scrambled. The network immediately issued a press statement confirming Sister Wives would be placed on indefinite hiatus, and internal sources revealed that network executives were blindsided by the full extent of the court's findings. Plans for spin-offs and reunion specials were scrapped overnight. Several staffers, according to leaks, were under review for failing to report troubling patterns they may have witnessed during production. "We had no idea it was this bad," one producer allegedly said. "We thought we were documenting a family, not a silent collapse." But the most haunting revelation of the day came from Kody himself, who eventually spoke during court, his voice shaking, his once commanding tone now fragile, fraying. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said. "I thought I was saving my family. I didn't see what I was doing. I wanted to be enough. I wanted to be respected. I didn't mean to hurt them. I just didn't know how to let go of control." The courtroom remained silent. The damage was done. No apology could undo years of silence, manipulation, and loss. But in that moment, Kody Brown, The man who once ruled over 4 wives and 24 children stood as nothing more than a man undone by his own hands. Christine later said in a private interview, "It wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. My kids needed to hear that they weren't wrong, that they weren't crazy, that what they lived through wasn't normal. And today they got that validation." Janelle echoed the sentiment. "I didn't want vengeance. I wanted closure. And I got it. We all did." And Mary, perhaps the most quietly devastated of them all, offered this heartbreaking summary as she exited the courtroom with tears streaking her cheeks. "We all gave him our lives, our faith, our hearts. And in return, he gave us silence, conditions, and distance. He loved the idea of family more than the people in it. But today, we stopped letting him write the story." And with that, the final chapter of the Brown family saga, once a tale of plural love and unity, now reads like a tragedy, a cautionary tale of what happens when power replaces compassion, and when one man's need for control blinds him to the very people he claimed to love. As Kody Brown wept alone in the courtroom, the rest of the family walked forward, finally free.